On the Foreign Relations and Homeland Security Committees, and he is my guest now, live from Capitol Hill. Senator, thank you for your time and welcome back here to America's Newsroom. We got a lot to go through. Let's get to it. Will you give the president the support he's looking for now?
I think what we need to do and what we really could use is a president like the first George Bush, who put together a coalition of dozens of Arab countries, including Arab troops on the ground. I think the only way this battle ultimately is won is with troops on the ground, but they need to be Arab troops. They need to be Iraqis. They need to be Kurds. One of the things we could do is directly arm the Kurds, and I'm in favor of this. Right now, we're making the arms go through the Shiite government in Baghdad, and I'm concerned that adequate arms aren't getting to the Kurds. Right now, we're destroying our own weapons in Afghanistan. Maybe we ought to think about taking some of the weapons, if we're no longer using them in Afghanistan, and transferring them to the Kurds. We prevented the Germans from arming the Kurds directly. We tell the Germans that the weapons have to go through Baghdad. The Kurds are the best fighters over there. I think we really need to incorporate them and give them the goal of a homeland, and I think they'll be even more fierce fighters. Turkey's a NATO ally. We need to incorporate Turkey, and Turkey needs to have troops on the ground. The Jordanians are fired up, and admirably so, but I think the Jordanians need to be part of this war with troops on the ground. So it's a coalition building, and I think the president's strategy so far is not working.
Well, so I'm going to put you down as a maybe. House Speaker Boehner was skeptical a moment ago, too. Is maybe a fair classification or not?
Well, I think the president has to do much more, and I think there has been, and I will say that there has been some improvement in the situation. Some of the dams that were under attack near Mosul, they have been pushed back. I don't think they're gaining ground. I think it's worrisome, the fighters coming in, and one of the people I blame for a lot of this, frankly, is Hillary Clinton. The disaster that is Libya is now a breeding ground for terrorists, and it's also a breeding ground for armaments. So really, I really do blame Hillary Clinton's war in Libya for creating a lot of the chaos that is now spreading throughout the Middle East.
Some would suggest that you are very hesitant when it comes to foreign intervention, and some would suggest you're a reluctant warrior. What do you think about that charge?
Well, I think if you ask Ronald Reagan, Colin Powell, Dwight Eisenhower, they would always tell you, and they would all tell you, and if you look at their documents of how they approached war, they all said that war was the last resort. So many of our famous generals, most of our famous fighters, those who have been involved in combat, are never eager for combat. I think we do have to militarily confront ISIS. I think it is a problem, though, and a bigger problem, because we allowed and were somewhat complicit in allowing ISIS to grow within the Syrian civil war, because we and our allies sent 600 tons of weapons into that civil war. Most of those weapons wound up in the hands of ISIS. So I was one who voted against arming the Syrian rebels, the Islamic rebels in Syria, because I said one irony is we'll be back one day to fight our own weapons. Now that day has come, and we do have to militarily confront ISIS, but I think Hillary's war in Libya, and then Hillary's admonition and the president's admonition, and frankly some Republicans' admonition to get involved in the Syrian civil war has actually now created a bigger problem, which is ISIS.
So that debate continues. Two more topics quickly now. You were in Iowa over the weekend. The headlines say you're trying to win over libertarians and Democrats along the way. But yet you've got a big push this week to audit the Fed.
Yeah, we had great crowds.
It may not be the fanciest topic, but how's that going to win votes?
Well, the interesting thing is we had 150 young people show up at one rally, about 60 show up during the middle of a basketball game, which is not easy for another rally, and they're very, very interested in making sure that we flood some sunshine on the Federal Reserve. We make sure that they're not dealing in conflict of interest. They own $2 trillion worth of distressed assets. Should we know if they're buying their brother-in-law's bank? I think at the very least we need to know whose stuff they've bought and whether or not there's any conflict of interest here. There's been an outcry from the Fed. It's somewhat galling that a group that we've given the monopoly privilege of printing up money is printing up money to lobby against transparency. So yes, I want an audit the Fed, and so do a lot of ordinary people in Iowa and Kentucky for that matter.
Scott Walker, Republican governor from Wisconsin, apparently has set up the first office in Iowa, said to be the first. How long before you do the same?
We're thinking about it, and part of traveling there and traveling across the U.S. is to see if the message resonates, to see if there is a big enough group that wants to have a different kind of voice. And so we'll make our decision sometime around March or April whether we're going to do that or not.
Senator Rand Paul from Kentucky, we will speak before then, hopefully. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Bill.
All right, good to have you. 21 minutes now before the